Visiting Roatan, Honduras, and navigating high season. We are now in high season, which runs from, well, we do have a pop in US Thanksgiving, so late Thanksgiving, and then it starts really around mid-December, the holidays, especially the Christmas and New Year's week, and it runs all the way through Semana Santa, which is a bit, it's the week before Easter. It is Holy Week. It is a very big week in Central America, and so that is actually the busiest week we have on the island, where there is a lot of people. So a couple things that will make your trip a little bit better if you are traveling in high season, which is when most people are here. It's the most to do. You also have to plan a little bit more because restaurants get booked, things get booked, cars get booked. So if you are traveling in these months, I would suggest plan as much in advance as you can, because that's when you're gonna have your most options, the best pricing, which is that's pretty obvious, and well, most people do that. Now, if you are traveling later in the year or after that April, Easter week, we do have a lot of people that are just kind of nomadic and they travel, they just kind of bounce from place to place and don't really plan it. It can be a little bit of a hassle if you are traveling in that high season, those 4 months. During the mid season and low season, you're going to have a lot more options with like the hostels or not really planning ahead, which I know with backpackers, which we do get quite a bit. Utila, another island in the Bay Islands, gets a lot more. So that type of crowd doesn't tend to plan as often or plan as much. But if you are just making the most out of your time and your activities while you are in Roatan, and you are coming during that high season, which is what we're in, and I noticed it with my neighborhood, where most people that live in my neighborhood, they live here part of the year, and so my neighborhood can get very quiet, especially during the rainy seasons or just, mid seasons. And the neighborhood is slammed with so many tourists right here. And I'm shooting this video in January. It's been busy since Christmas, which is nice. It's nice, vibrant. It's people at the pool. It's all the things, and so it's nice, a vibrant place, which is nice because I'm one of the only full-time resident or full-time, I guess residents is the right word, in the neighborhood. There are a lot on the other side. Anyway, I digress. The area is busy, so I recommend planning as far in advance on everything that you can, which I know is pretty obvious, but that also includes a car, like car rentals. I don't believe there's any cars, SUVs available on the island. They're all rented, so you have to get sedans. Right now, the roads aren't super great, so I wouldn't be driving a sedan around the island, especially if you are over on the east side of the island, or if you have a dirt driveway going to the unit where you are at. So just a couple things to think about. And even with restaurant reservations, if you want to go to Pazzo, one of the best Italian restaurants on the island, you usually have to book that weeks in advance because he has very limited seating. He likes to make sure everybody has a wonderful time, so he takes a very limited number of people in his restaurant at any given time. Most restaurants will take reservations just in busy season, and not all the restaurants will take walk-ins. And that's typically at night. But something else to think about during the day is those daytime activities. Those are a little bit easier to find, especially in the West Bay, where there's people holding up signs everywhere. Those don't usually have to be booked in advance, but if you do want like an island tour or something of that nature, it is nice to book that ahead of time, and also ask them what their busy days are. Because if you are in busy season for people on the island, and also busy cruise ship season are one and the same. So and a lot of cruise ship have deals with some places, especially if you're over kind of mid-island, east island, and doing all of those excursions, the zip lines, the monkeys, the sloths, all the water activities. If you're going to any of the keys or cays on the island, those tend to be very, big spots for the cruise ships, which if you call them ahead of time, you can say, hey, we're here for a few days. Is there a day that's better than another one? Because you want, unless you just want to wait in line and it's really crowded, which if that's your thing, that's super awesome. It is not my thing. So I like to call ahead of time and saying, hey, do you have some light days? They will tend to be Monday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday tend to be our biggest cruise ship days, where we have 5 to 7 boats in a lot of the times. And on those days, things are just booked. So your afternoon activities can be booked, or they're just really crowded. And unless you want to stand in the hot sun, like, anyway, you do you, but just some advice, even on the daytime things. Now, the daytime, you don't really need reservations for restaurants, which is also nice. But I would anticipate larger crowds, especially if you are going to doing more touristy type activities that cater to the cruise ships. And if you are on a cruise ship, this is still for you. You just don't have a lot of control over your timing. But if you do book in advance, I'm a super fan of booking through locally. Instead of going with the cruise ship, no offense to the cruise ship, I just like the money staying locally. So doing a little bit of research up front, sometimes like dive shops, if you're into diving, they can set all of that up for you, especially if you don't want to be cattle herded with some of the bigger shops. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I worked for them for a very long time. I just like to dive in little groups, and then you're going to usually have to book those out individually. So those are a few things that are going to make your time a little bit better during high season. Now, if you're not here in high season, a couple things to look at is restaurant hours change. A lot of the restaurants and everything are mom and pop. It's family owned. So nobody wants to work all the time. And especially being super tired after the high season, the hours are cut down significantly. They're not always open for lunch, or not always open for dinner, only open 3 days a week, etc. So something to think about, especially like Sunday, Monday are 2 days where things do tend to be closed. So something to think about. There are restaurants open 7 days a week, basically breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I think the best restaurants, in my opinion, there are a few exceptions at resorts that are just open all the time, but some of our most famous restaurants that are not attached to a hotel do have limited hours during those non-peak seasons. That's personally when I like the island best. I work a lot more in busy season, and it's a little bit slower. So if you are here during busy season, it's going to be the most fun. You're going to have it's going to be the busiest, especially if you're into like the bar scene or going out at night. It's going to be vibrant. It's going to be fun. Parties can go, if you're in West End, it really doesn't close down until 2 o'clock. So you do you. I won't tell you to drink Red Bulls or do whatever you want. Or if you're like me and want to go home at 8 o'clock every night, that's cool too. Sunsets are the best. My favorites tend to be in West End. West Bay also has some really great sunsets, just being on the west side of the island versus the sunrises, which are more on the east side of the island. That's just how the sun works. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful vacation in Roatan, Honduras. If you ever have any questions, especially if you want to talk real estate, thinking about buying, wanting to know a little bit more about Roatan and what life would be like on this beautiful island, my door is always open.